September 17, 1862. Dawn breaks over a Maryland creek called Antietam. A heavy fog clings to the ground, muffling the sound of 100,000 men preparing for battle. Confederate General Robert E. Lee stands on a ridge near Sharpsburg, surveying the gentle rolling hills that will soon become America's killing ground. His army of 40,000 exhausted men faces twice their number across the creek. Behind them, the Potomac River blocks any retreat. Lee has gambled everything on this ground. In the next 12 hours, more Americans will die than on any other single day in the nation's history. The air is thick with tension and moisture. Union soldiers in blue coats check their rifle muskets one final time. Across Antietam Creek, Confederates in gray and butternut clutch their weapons with white knuckles. Many haven't eaten in days. Their uniforms are tattered from weeks of hard marching. Some wear captured Union blue from their victory at Harper's Ferry just 2 days earlier, a detail that will cause deadly confusion before this day ends. The cornfield north of Sharpsburg stands tall and ready for harvest, its stalks rustling in the pre-dawn breeze. By sunset, that field will have changed hands 15 times, soaked in blood, every stalk cut down as if by a scythe. This battle shouldn't be happening. 2 weeks earlier, a Union corporal discovered 3 cigars wrapped in paper, lying in a Maryland field. That paper was Special Order 191, Robert E. Lee's complete battle plan, showing his army dangerously divided across Maryland. It was the intelligence coup of the century, handed directly to Union General George McClellan. With Lee's army split and McClellan holding his enemy's playbook, the war could have ended that September. But McClellan, brilliant at organizing armies but paralyzed by caution, moved too slowly. He gave Lee just enough time to reunite his scattered forces near Sharpsburg. Lee's invasion of the North was supposed to change everything. After crushing Union forces at Second Bull Run in August, the Confederate commander saw an opening. Bring the war to northern soil, threaten Washington, win a decisive victory on Union territory. Such a triumph might convince Britain and France to recognize the Confederacy, breaking the Union blockade and turning the tide of the war. It could sway the northern public, weary of death and defeat, to demand peace negotiations. The Maryland campaign was Lee's most ambitious gamble, and now, with his back to the Potomac and McClellan's army closing in, it was becoming his most desperate. For President Abraham Lincoln, this battle carried stakes beyond military victory. The war was going badly. Union armies had been beaten again and again in the Eastern Theater. Northern morale was crumbling. Congressional elections loomed in November, and Republicans feared losing control. Lincoln had another concern weighing on his mind, a document he'd drafted in July but couldn't yet release: the Emancipation Proclamation. His cabinet, particularly Secretary of State William Seward, had advised him to wait for a military victory. To issue it after a string of defeats would make it seem like an act of desperation. Lincoln needed a win. Antietam would give him that chance, or doom the Union cause entirely. As the fog begins to lift on September 17th, Union General Joseph Hooker's First Corps moves into position north of the Confederate line. His target, a whitewashed church belonging to the German Baptist Brethren, the Dunker Church, sitting on a rise along the Hagerstown Pike. To reach it, his 600 men must advance through David Miller's 30-acre cornfield and drive out Stonewall Jackson's veterans. Hooker, a brash and confident general, surveys the field through his binoculars. He can see Confederate bayonets glinting in the corn. He orders his artillery forward. The first shells arc through the morning air at 5:30 a.m., their explosions shattering the fragile peace. The Battle of Antietam has begun. In the next 12 hours, 3 separate battles will rage across this landscape: in the north around the cornfield and Dunker Church, in the center at a sunken farm road that will earn the name Bloody Lane, and in the south at a stone bridge where Union General Ambrose Burnside will spend crucial hours trying to cross a creek barely 12 feet wide. Each phase will produce its own horrors. Each will offer opportunities to end the war, and each will demonstrate how men can achieve both extraordinary courage and catastrophic failure on the same blood-soaked ground. What none of these soldiers know, not Lee on his ridge, not McClellan at his headquarters east of the creek, not the young farm boys checking their ammunition, is that they're about to fight in the single bloodiest day in American history, a day that will reshape the nation's future and echo through generations yet unborn. The Confederate artillery responds immediately. Colonel Stephen D. Lee's batteries, positioned on high ground near the Dunker Church, open fire on Hooker's advancing lines. Union cannons roar back from the ridge behind the North Woods. 20 Parrott rifles, positioned 2 miles east of Antietam Creek, add their thunder to the barrage. The noise is deafening, described by one Confederate colonel as artillery hell. The shells scream overhead, exploding in geysers of dirt and shrapnel. Men who've survived previous battles say they've never heard anything like it. The ground itself seems to shake with fury. Hooker's infantry advances toward the cornfield at 6 a.m. The corn stands 7 feet tall, dense enough to hide entire regiments. Union soldiers push through the stalks, unable to see more than a few feet ahead. Suddenly, Confederate rifle fire erupts from inside the field. Men drop, clutching wounds, their screams lost in the cacophony of battle. The Federal troops fire back blindly into the corn. At point-blank range, the fighting becomes savage. Rifle butts, bayonets, hand-to-hand struggle in the narrow rows. The corn stalks, moments ago waving peacefully, are now being mowed down by bullets as if harvested by some hellish machine. The Union forces push through, driving Stonewall Jackson's men back toward the Westwoods and Dunker Church. For a moment, it seems like Hooker might break the Confederate left entirely, but Jackson isn't called Stonewall for nothing. He rallies his troops, calling up reinforcements from deeper in his line. Brigadier General William E. Stark leads 1,150 men in a desperate countercharge, firing from just 30 yards away. The Union soldiers stagger under the impact. Stark himself falls, mortally wounded, but his attack has halted the Federal advance. Enter the Iron Brigade, the 4th Brigade under Brigadier General John Gibbon, some of the toughest soldiers in the Union Army. Wearing distinctive black hardy hats, these Western troops advance down the Hagerstown Pike, directly into the teeth of Confederate fire. They clash with what remains of Stark's brigade in brutal close-quarters combat. The Iron Brigade lives up to its reputation, refusing to break under withering fire. They push the Confederates back, until a large gap opens in Jackson's defensive line. The Dunker Church is within reach. The Confederate left flank is about to collapse. But Lee has been watching from his command post. He's been shifting troops all morning, moving men from quiet sectors to threatened ones, conducting a desperate shell game with his outnumbered forces. Just after 7 a.m., reinforcements arrive. The divisions of Major Generals Lafayette McLaws and Richard H. Anderson rushing from the right flank to shore up Jackson's crumbling line. Fresh Confederate troops slam into Hooker's exhausted men. The tide turns again. General Joseph Mansfield arrives with his 12th Corps, 7,200 men, many of them raw recruits who've been in the Army less than a month. Mansfield himself is 59 years old and has only commanded this corps for 2 days. He rides forward to assess the situation personally, too far forward. A Confederate bullet strikes him in the chest. He tumbles from his horse, mortally wounded. His green troops continue forward without their commander, some so inexperienced they don't know how to load their rifles properly. They're advancing into a meat grinder. The cornfield becomes a vision of hell. Bodies pile upon bodies. The ground grows slick with blood. One Union officer later compares it to the stone wall at Fredericksburg and the slaughter at Cold Harbor, declaring that the Antietam Turnpike surpassed them all in manifest evidence of slaughter. Another veteran remembers feeling like the sun had stopped moving in the sky. That night would never come to end this horror. Soldiers step over their fallen comrades to take the next shot, reload, fire again. Many don't get the chance. Confederate artillery tears holes in the Union ranks, while Federal cannons return the favor. For 2 hours, the cornfield changes hands repeatedly. Union forces surge forward, only to be thrown back by Confederate counterattacks. The Confederates advance, only to be driven back by fresh Union brigades. 15 times, the cornfield changes hands. Major Rufus Dawes of the 6th Wisconsin Infantry watches in disbelief as every stalk of corn in that 30-acre field is cut down by bullets, cut as closely as could have been done with a knife. The men who stood in those ranks just moments before lie in rows, precisely as they had stood in formation, now silent and still. By 9 a.m., the fighting in the northern sector has reached a brutal stalemate. Both sides have fed nearly every available man into the cornfield and the woods around Dunker Church. Union casualties have passed 2,500 men, killed, wounded, or missing. Confederate losses are equally staggering. The ground is carpeted with bodies wearing both blue and gray. The wounded cry out for water, for their mothers, for God. But the battle is far from over. The carnage is about to shift southward, to a sunken farm road where Confederate defenders wait behind a natural trench, ready to turn their position into the deadliest killing field of the day. While the northern sector descends into stalemate, Union General Edwin Sumner's Second Corps crosses Antietam Creek around 7:30 a.m. One of his divisions, commanded by Major General John Sedgwick, heads toward the west woods to support the battered remnants of Hooker's corps. The other division, under Brigadier General William French, veers southward. French's men crest a ridge and suddenly find themselves staring at a sunken farm road, a lane worn 4 feet deep into the Maryland countryside by decades of wagon traffic to a nearby grist mill. And in that road, Confederate Major General D.H. Hill has positioned 2,600 of his best troops. The sunken road is a natural fortress. Hill's men, primarily North Carolinians and Alabamians, crouch behind fence rails they've stacked along the road's edge, creating a crude but effective parapet. The depression puts them below ground level, protected from direct fire while giving them clear shooting lanes at anyone foolish enough to attack across the open ground above. Hill knows what he has here. He's turned a simple farm lane into a death trap. When his officers ask if they can hold, Hill replies with grim confidence, "They'll hold as long as ammunition lasts." French's division advances at 9:30 a.m. His men march up the gentle slope toward the sunken road, their regimental flags bright in the late morning sun. They have no idea what awaits them. Confederate rifles erupt in a thunderous volley. The first Union line crumples like paper, men falling in heaps. Those behind step over the bodies and continue forward, only to meet the same fate. The 108th New York Infantry, in the Army less than 3 weeks, loses half its strength in minutes. Confused and panicked, some of French's troops accidentally fire into their own men from behind. The survivors reach the crest of the ridge above the road and return fire, but they're shooting down at an enemy protected by earth and fence rails. It's a slaughter. Reinforcements arrive. Major General Israel Richardson's division, including the famed Irish Brigade under General Thomas Meagher. These Irish immigrants from New York wear sprigs of green boxwood in their caps, a tribute to their homeland. They're veterans of brutal fighting, but they've never seen anything like this. Meagher orders them forward across 200 yards of open ground, swept by Confederate fire. The Irish Brigade advances in perfect formation, flags flying, taking casualties with every step. They reach to within feet of the sunken road and pour volley after volley into the Confederate ranks below. 540 Irish Brigade soldiers fall, killed or wounded in less than an hour of fighting. But they don't break. They hold their ground and keep firing. For 3 hours, the battle along the sunken road rages. Confederate Brigadier General George B. Anderson is shot defending the position. He'll die weeks later from amputation complications. General Richardson himself is struck by a Confederate shell fragment and mortally wounded. The casualties on both sides mount horrifically. The road begins to fill with bodies, blood pooling in the depression until soldiers later swear the lane ran red. Bloody Lane, the name that will haunt this place forever, is being earned with every passing minute. Then, around 1 p.m., disaster strikes the Confederate line. A misunderstood order causes part of the defense to withdraw prematurely. Union troops spot the confusion and surge forward. They pour fire directly down the length of the road, enfilading the remaining defenders. Confederate soldiers scramble out of the lane, retreating in chaos. The Union has broken Lee's center. The Confederate line is split wide open. A decisive push now could cut Lee's army in two, trap it against the Potomac, end the war. But the push doesn't come. Union commanders hesitate. Their troops are exhausted, disorganized, running low on ammunition. Confederate artillery from the Piper farm beyond the road fires desperately to cover the retreat. Fresh Confederate units, Cobb's Legion and the 27th North Carolina, rush in from the West Woods to stabilize what's left of the center. The moment passes. By mid-afternoon, the fighting at Bloody Lane settles into an uneasy calm. The Union holds the road, but they've advanced no further. Thousands of men lie dead or dying along that sunken lane, their blood literally soaking into the Maryland soil. When burial details arrive in the following days, they'll find bodies stacked 2 and 3 deep. McClellan has missed his chance. From his headquarters, he has the men. Thousands of fresh troops from the 5th Corps have been held in reserve all day, but he doesn't commit them. He's convinced himself that Lee has superior numbers, when in reality, the Confederates are outnumbered and bleeding from multiple wounds. While McClellan hesitates at his command post, the battle shifts one final time, to the south, where General Ambrose Burnside faces his own deadly challenge at a narrow stone bridge over Antietam Creek. On the southern end of the battlefield, Union General Ambrose Burnside has been struggling all morning with a problem that should have taken minutes to solve. His 9th Corps, 12,500 men, needs to cross Antietam Creek. The creek is barely 12 feet wide and only waist-deep in most places. His men could simply wade across. But Burnside fixates on a single stone bridge, a narrow span defended by just 400 Georgia troops under Brigadier General Robert E. Those 400 Georgians, positioned on the steep heights west of the creek, command a perfect field of fire. Every Union soldier attempting to cross that bridge must advance in a narrow column, fully exposed. It's a killing funnel, and the Georgians are expert marksmen. Burnside orders assault after assault. Wave after wave of Union soldiers charge the bridge, only to be cut down by concentrated rifle fire. The 2nd Maryland Infantry tries and fails. The 11th Connecticut attempts the crossing. Their colonel falls dead on the bridge itself, his body tumbling into the creek below. For 3 hours, Burnside batters his men against this obstacle, while his officers beg him to simply ford the creek elsewhere. Finally, at 1 p.m., the 51st New York and 51st Pennsylvania make a desperate charge. They storm across the bridge under murderous fire, suffering terrible casualties, but finally securing the crossing. The stone span will forever after be known as Burnside's Bridge. But those 3 wasted hours have cost more than Union lives. It's now past 3 p.m. by the time Burnside gets his full corps across the creek and reorganized. His fresh troops advance toward Sharpsburg, pushing back the thin Confederate line. For the second time today, Lee's army teeters on the edge of catastrophe. Burnside's men are driving straight toward the single road Lee needs for retreat. If they cut it, the entire Confederate army of Northern Virginia will be trapped against the Potomac River. Destruction is minutes away. Lee stands on a ridge, watching the blue tide advance. His army is fought out, bled white. There are no more reserves to throw into the breach. Then, through the dust and smoke to the south, a column appears. It's A.P. Hill's Light Division, 3,000 men who have just completed a forced march of 17 miles from Harper's Ferry. Hill had been left behind 2 days earlier to process Union prisoners from that garrison's surrender. That morning, he received an urgent message from Lee. "Come now." Hill drove his men mercilessly through the heat, many falling exhausted by the roadside, but the core of his division arrived at exactly the right moment. Some of Hill's soldiers wear blue uniforms captured at Harper's Ferry, adding to the confusion as they slam into Burnside's exposed left flank. When Hill reports to Lee, the Confederate commander exclaims, "General Hill, I was never so glad to see you." Hill, wearing his distinctive red battle shirt and waving his sword, personally leads the counterattack. The 16th Connecticut Infantry, in the army less than 2 weeks many soldiers still don't know how to load their rifles, bears the brunt of Hill's assault. They're slaughtered. The 4th Rhode Island fights desperately but is driven back. Burnside's entire advance collapses. His corps retreats back toward the creek. The last chance to destroy Lee's army vanishes with the setting sun. As darkness falls over the battlefield, both armies remain in position, too exhausted to continue. The guns finally fall silent after 12 hours of continuous combat. The morning of September 18th dawns over a landscape transformed into hell. Bodies cover the fields. In the cornfield along Bloody Lane, near the bridge. The count staggers the mind. 22,727 men killed, wounded, or missing. The Union suffers 12,400 casualties. The Confederates, despite their smaller numbers, lose 10,300, a quarter of Lee's entire army. Over 3,600 men are dead. That's more American deaths than the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and the Mexican-American War combined. All in one day. All on American soil. Brothers killing brothers in fields that should have been harvesting corn. McClellan doesn't renew the attack on September 18th, despite having fresh troops available. That night, Lee withdraws his battered army back across the Potomac into Virginia. Technically, the battle is a draw. Tactically, neither side can claim clear victory. But strategically, Lee's invasion has failed. The Confederate army has been driven from northern soil. The threat to Washington has ended, and that's enough for Abraham Lincoln. On September 22nd, 5 days after Antietam, the President issues the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. The war is no longer just about preserving the Union. It's now a war to end slavery. Britain and France, both having abolished slavery decades earlier, abandon any thoughts of recognizing the Confederacy. Europe will not intervene to save a slave nation. Antietam's echo reverberates through history. Photographer Alexander Gardner arrives days after the battle, creating the first photographs of American battlefield dead before burial. The images shock the nation. There's no glory here, only death's grim reality. The battle proves the Union can stand against Lee's army. It gives Lincoln the victory he needs to transform the war's purpose. It ensures the Confederacy will fight and die alone, without European allies. And it establishes September 17, 1862, as America's bloodiest day, a record that mercifully has never been broken. The creek still flows near Sharpsburg, the cornfield still grows, the Sunken Road still cuts through the Maryland landscape, but they're haunted places now, forever stained by the blood of a nation at war with itself.